Okay, ladies and gentlemen, my name is Carol Rosin. It's wonderful for me to be here. I'm coming out of the military-industrial complex a few years ago. I started looking for who on this issue could we trust, and it turns out a lot of those people are here. But there's one icon on the stage right here next to me that it's my pleasure to introduce, Suzanne Taylor, who has introduced to the world of the people that I'm in touch with now, who are working on various elements to this UFO issue, also looking for the messages, the truth, how to discern, how can we see what's going on in the world. Well, Suzanne Taylor years ago, when I first heard about her, was in LA, bringing people together to her home to have salons to talk about many, many issues, including this one, The Mighty Companions. She's a former actress and filmmaker, documentary maker. She has put together more pictures of videos and videos of crop circles that have brought this reality to the consciousness of people who otherwise would not even be listening to those of us who are trying to get the truth and messages out there. Now you'll see Jaime Maussan in one of her videos that I hope all of you will get because it's really spectacular. Jaime, you may know, has a television show that comes out of Mexico with about 20-some million followers on this issue that he produces every week. She's gotten him and many other people like this together to present this information. And she's also going to be putting on the internet, as I understand it, a salon so that people can make contact. And I highly recommend you get this information from her because you'll be able to talk about and put together a lot of the thoughts, concepts, and actions that can be done around this issue. So right now, I'm happy to introduce to you someone who's having an enormous impact. She's won a lot of awards for her documentary, her films. And it is this wonderful person next to me named Suzanne Taylor. What a pleasure. Thank you being on the stage with you.
Thank you to my buddy Carol. It's nice to have a buddy introduce you. I thought we would start by, it's funny, crop circles are so visual, and I'm going to talk for an hour, but I thought it would be a good idea for you to see a little something. So we're going to start with my trailer, which is just a couple of minutes. It's the trailer from my current film, What on Earth?
Worldviews determine what we allow ourselves to perceive.
Our existing worldview and the way we think right now is failing us.
To stand up for entirely new and unfamiliar realities requires a lot of heroism.
It was only, 1620 that they put Galileo on house arrest?
Everyone found it astonishing that these complicated works of art, sometimes as big as 2 football fields, were turning up in crop fields overnight. In fact, eyewitnesses say the patterns take only seconds to go down.
We've got this breathtaking beauty. This is phenomenon A. Phenomenon B is that the world can ignore it.
Yes, there are man-made formations, but the totality of it is such that there has to be something bigger at work here.
The first time when I walked into a circle, it was like, oh my God, what has the power to do this?
In terms of the real world as it is, this could not be made.
When I sit and think about it, that whole concept, encoded geometrical designs in wheat fields, is just so far out there.
The most successful areas of research in crop formations are undoubtedly geometry and mathematics, because it's about the unfolding of the mathematical or geometrical structure within creation.
You cannot take crop circles in isolation. They're a tip of a multi-tipped iceberg, and they connect up with UFOs, they connect up with psychic phenomena.
Governments, armies, church does not want this out in the world because it changes the world, it changes humanity.
Is the crop circle phenomenon going to unite us as one humanity in relation to other intelligent life? Will we become better stewards of the planet and we live in peace?
That is so gorgeous.
You look at that and you think, what on earth made that?
Okay. Hopefully, they're going to be showing my film at the same time they're going to show Sirius. I know a lot of you have seen Sirius, so if they can come up with the projector and what have you, they'll show my movie then. Otherwise, it's buried in a time slot when some of the most interesting people here are speaking, so I don't expect anybody to go to it unless we can get it on Saturday night. But I really recommend, if you don't see it here, get my DVD. It has an hour of bonus material. It has a movie which is an hour and a half. I'm going to show, whenever I show it, I'm going to show a shortened version that's only 52 minutes. And I want this information to be in everybody's hands. And if you own the DVD, you can show your friends. So I'm shameless about, really wanting people to see this. This is information really that can impact our worldview. Yes. It'll be outside, so you'll be able to pick up a copy. The reason that I was interested in crop circles to begin with is because it could impact our worldview. When I'm speaking to audiences who are less aware than you are, I usually start with this. This is stainless steel. And I have a friend, it takes him, 20 seconds to do this. Believe me, if you tried to bend this, it would take all the force you had to maybe budget a little. And I always say, if that can happen in this reality, open your minds. Anything is possible. Be open. So I love this spoon. He brought it to my house with the price tag still on it. And this was the biggest one, and then he just proceeded. I have a whole bowl full of smaller spoons, one after another. He just bent them all. So his name is Gary Sinclair. He lives near San Diego. So as I said, the reason that I'm interested in crop circles and what I'm going to really talk about here, I'm not going to give you a lot of crop circle data. You get that in my movie or whatever, information. There are other video products out there. And you can find out how many there were and what countries they're in, what the particular aspects of them are. But I really want to talk about the significance and the world and what's happening and what can happen and what we can do. And then I'll weave, crop circles into that, but it's not really, this talk is not data-based about crop circles. In fact, I'm going to start by telling you how Is everybody okay? Okay, I'm getting a wave. I don't know, was that good? Like, gets attention if you were falling asleep because it's hot in here? It was positive. Okay, good. So I thought I'd start by telling you who I am and how I came into all of this and how I ended up standing here. I started out I think of it as my first life, where I was in the sort of Ozzie and Harriet world. I was a good wife, although I was always an achiever. I never really thought I was going to do much other than be a good wife, because that's what my mother was. And I always wanted to do things really well. I somehow got this bug. I would come home from school, and I would come home with like a 98. And my father would say, well, where are the other 2 points? He was kidding, sort of, but I really became, it became what was expected of me that I was going to achieve. It was the given. My father was a high achiever. He was the president of his bar association, and when he died, they closed all the courthouses in Nassau County, Long Island, where we lived, for half a day in his honor. Lawyers were thought of differently then. But he was, you know, a major being, and my mother also. My mother was in college when she was 15 at NYU. She was president of the women in her senior year. So I came from, you know, an achiever family, and it was just natural for me to want to really do well. But I had another track in my childhood that I think led me here, which is that I was somewhat of an outsider. I had the highest marks in the class. I was Phi Beta Kappa. I graduated from NYU summa cum laude. I once took a high school class again because I got an 89 in the final, and it was just too humiliating to me. So I took it. It was a math class. I got 100 in all my maths, because you could. You couldn't get 100 in English, but you could get 100 in math. I got 100 in all the math. I got 100 the second time I took it. Despite the fact that I was an achiever, good marks, I was president of clubs, and I was always an actress in school also. I was always in school plays. But I also had a unique quality that made me an outsider. And that was that I was the only Jewish child in a Gentile world. And it was a time when Jews were not well thought of. So every day was somewhat of a struggle to what? I didn't understand it. You know, it was from little, you know. Kids knew. One thing we knew when I went to school was what every person's religion was. Now, I don't even know what people's religions are. But when I went to school, you knew, maybe because you had to hate the Jews, so you had to know who they were. But I was definitely stigmatized. And so, hang on. We need a table here. And so I was never, you know, part of the crowd, so to speak. And I wanted to be, you know, but I had to find my crowd. I had to find, where did I belong? Well, I belonged not here. I belonged somewhere. So I kept, you know, kind of looking beyond where we are, thinking something's wrong with this world. This does not make sense. Why am I being treated this way? It didn't make sense. I mean, we weren't religious even. I'm serious. I don't know anything about my religion, to be honest with you. But that's what we were. That was what my label was. And so I was, you know, different and looking for more. So this kind of, you could add all that up to my striving for excellence and my looking for somewhere else, to this kind of desire to change the world and save the world. Sounds megalomaniacal, but I have this kind of mission to save the world. I mean, don't think I think that's, you know, my job, so to speak, or expect that I'm going to be successful, so to speak. But then again, that's all I think about. And what? Can you not hear? Okay. So after I got unmarried, when my mission was beyond making a wonderful family, I wrote a cookbook. You know, that's what I could do. That's what I did as a married person. I started to produce events and projects that would open people's minds. And that was back in the human potential movement. So it was personal growth, self-awareness, all the kind of subjects that we were enmeshed in the human potential movement, immersed in the human potential movement. And I got very immersed myself and then started to produce programs. And I live in LA, so it's a crossroads of the world, and the most interesting people are passing through. And I got on lists of book agents, for instance, or publishers, and they would call me and they would say, so-and-so's going to be in town, you want a program? And I would produce programs for all these people. The crop circles came along as just another subject matter. It was in the late 80s, and I had a friend who had a son who was stationed in the military, and he would go out on his leave on the weekends, and he would take pictures that I saw of what they were calling at the time landing pads for UFOs. Well, they didn't have the name then, landing pads for UFOs is what they were called, but they were crop circles. And I saw the pictures, and I thought, wow, if they are landing pads for UFOs, that's something quite concrete. That's not like the ephemeral nature of the UFO phenomenon, which I hadn't glommed onto as subject matter. But I thought, wait a minute, if we can go into those and we can study those and we can ascertain that they are not being made by us, that's the fast track to saving the world. If you think about the fact that we need a new perspective, we need to think again about who we are, what are we doing here. Right now, we are the master race. Even though we believe that there's other life, we see how vast the universe is, and you know, nobody is closed to the possibility that there's other life. But being open to it and having evidence of it are two different things. So here I thought, if we really have this evidence, this is going to be much bigger than all these other slow-moving kind of processes to improve ourselves and to get wiser and all of the kinds of things that I was producing other programs about. But it took me a while to, you know, kind of build up more head of steam as I was producing crop circle programs, along with the other things that I was still producing all the other things as well. But the difference with the crop circle programs is there was a huge interest in the late 80s and the early 90s, much more so than now, because it was a mystery. The world was open to it. Everybody was very curious. It would make news in the newspapers. And I could no longer hold these programs in the relatively smaller spaces in my lovely home, in my salons. I had to rent halls and take them out into bigger spaces because there was just a huge curiosity, and getting audiences was quite easy in those days. Well, eventually, it was in '89 that I first saw those pictures, and in 1993 I went to England for the first time, and you know, I had to see for myself, and well, that was a mind blow. I know a lot of you have been to the circles. You know, once you go in one of those circles, you're different, you know something awesome is going on. And so it took me another couple of years of going over there and coming back, and taking it on as a mission, that if I was going to do anything with my life that was going to be different from what other people were able to do, I knew something, and I was going to let the world know that this crop circle phenomenon existed. And how do you let the world know anything? You make movies. Now, that was not such a stretch for me. I already was an actress. That was my profession. I was a drama major in college. It's the only thing I ever wanted to do. And even though my husband was not tremendously keen on my having a full-blown career, I became very successful actually making commercials. I made a lot of commercials because they only took a day, you know. I could get out for a day and still be the good wife. And so that's where I had my greatest success, although I did a smattering of everything else. I have a nice page in the movie database, IMDb, with all my little shows. And being an actress, you know, I was very, and my husband, by the way, was a producer. So a little fact of interest. He became a producer after starting as a comedy writer. He was the story editor of the Dick Van Dyke Show, and he created Marlo Thomas's show, That Girl, which they've never heard of in England. Right? They know Dick Van Dyke. And so that was my world, you know, it was my married life world, and it was my actress world. So, you know, deciding to make a movie wasn't the most left field thing I could have done. But I said, you know, I'm going to get this information out. I'm going to get a movie, make a movie somehow, you know. Well, I'm not a movie maker per se, so I started to look around for a filmmaker. And I finally found an Academy Award nominated filmmaker who had just so happened had a girlfriend who was one of the Crop Circle researchers, and he'd been to England in 2000, and he came home wanting to make a movie, and somebody told me that, hey, this guy's looking to make a movie, and you're looking for a director. So we got together, and we spent a year kind of figuring out what to do, and I became the executive producer of the first feature film that was ever done about the circles that came out in 2002. It's called Crop Circles: Quest for Truth. And it is a history of the crop circles. Well, it wasn't really supposed to be a history of the crop circles, but the filmmaker had the power to kind of make the film he wanted to make. I wanted to make the passion of the crop circles. Why have all of these substantial people have referred to them in some of the talks, have sort of given up their ordinary lives that were quite successful to become crop circle. They take the pictures, they write the books, they produce the conferences, and really this rabid group of people who collect in England every summer, they're from all over the world, to be we call ourselves, because I'm one of them now, we call ourselves croppies. So I am your crappie in residence here. Hang on. Noisy, too. I'm going to put this on the floor so I can just pick it up. Okay. So I made that. We made that movie, and when that came out in 2002, the movie I wanted to make was still there to be made. And now I'd gone to school on watching somebody make a movie because I was on the shoot. I put it together. I was the person who knew more about crop circles than the filmmaker knew. And so I was kind of, you know, amassing the storyline, the intelligence, whatever. He kind of took off from there and became the expert who changed some of my things. But nonetheless, I was on a 10-week shoot. It was really an incredible summer when we shot in 2001, the biggest one ever, the size of 2 football fields. It's not in the trailer, but we end the movie with it. You can just picture the size of 2 football fields. You're in this thing. Picture how big football fields are. It's everywhere. You can't believe it. There are circles everywhere. I mean, you're just in awe. You cannot believe that this could possibly be, but there you are. You're standing in it. Well, it was that summer. It was also the summer of the Face, for those of you who know crop circle lore, and the summer of the Message about the telescope from the Arecibo telescope that Carl Sagan had a hand in designing, and then we got a message in the field that paralleled it. If you don't know what I'm talking about, it's too long a story to go into, but it was really quite a summer, and that's the summer that we shot that first movie. But when that first movie came out, I thought, no, there's another movie here. It's the one I wanted to make. And so I set out in 2003 to make my movie, and I became the filmmaker. So I just watched him. I watched what he did. I watched who he hired. Filmmaking is a hugely collaborative process. Nobody makes a film alone. You become the kind of arranger, you hire all the other people, you put them all together, you supervise it, you edit it, you have an editor who helps you do that. So I became the filmmaker of this film that you just saw the trailer for, One on Earth. And big claim to fame is, I don't know if you noticed that there's a line in there of a review from the New York Times. It's the first time the New York Times has mentioned crop circles in decades, and we got a really good review. I can't tell you how thrilled I was. In fact, somebody had a video camera on me as I was opening the New York Times to look for the review, and I found the review and read it. I got so excited that the footage is kind of awful. It's like a crazy lady. So nobody's seen that footage but me and my friends. I mean, it was awesome. The New York Times is the place. In fact, when I was showing the film in New York, and I knew the Times critic was coming, and the question was, what if they don't like it? And the answer was, it doesn't matter. Any review in the New York Times is better than no review in the New York Times. And then we got a good review. In fact, I called the reviewer because, a lot of people who watch, because we've gotten reviews in, secondary sources, and a lot of them are like, well, where are the hoaxers and where's the other side of the story? Well, that's not the movie I made. But, they're very cynical about the subject to begin with. And so when I called the reviewer, I told her that. I said, boy, what a thrill this was after people telling me where was this and where was that. And she said, I reviewed the film you made, not the one you didn't make. So I thought, I said, can I quote you? She said, no, you're only allowed to quote what I wrote in the review. So don't tell anybody. I can't put it in print. So now I want to talk a little bit about the world that we're in and how we need to get to another one and what's going on. I have a perspective on what's going on. In my first life, my daily activity was so different from what it is now, and I think in the time frame that would be true for all of us, or most of us anyway. I played golf. I played bridge. I didn't always think about the world. And what I notice is, or what I'm aware of is, how the internet has revolutionized my everyday life. I'm never off. Email is always coming in. When my dad came home at 6 o'clock from his successful law practice, we ate dinner, we watched TV. He was off. I'm never off. And I think most of us we're wired in and it's on all the time. I think there are two factors that go into that aside from the electronic, kind of basic equipment kind of reality to all of this, which is that the world is in so much trouble. We didn't think of the world that way in my first life. Problems, lots of problems, but we weren't talking about the end of humanity. And we weren't talking about, the internet goes down and the world ends. We're in such a, tough spot in the world. And also, we have become so concerned about survival and making money beyond survive. Everybody's always concerned about survival, but once you get past surviving, when you are surviving, we're obsessed with success.
And it's the way it is, it's the system. So I'm thinking this is the world we live in now, that we need to deal with now. And I want to make a comment that I hope I can make myself understood. There's such a popular opinion now that we are all the victims of the so-called 1%, and that it's the government too, are there to get us, or they are the enemy. And I want to suggest that there's another way to see things, which is that it's a system. It's not like, there's some talk about the Illuminati and they want to destroy 80% of the population, and then they're going to own everything, and they're keeping us suppressed and what have you. And I want to suggest that, first of all, the people who are very rich are having a really good time at the level of what money buys you. And they don't need to destroy us. They're doing just fine with it the way it is. And if they destroyed us, they destroy the world. They destroy their world. And it's very convenient to blame them. It's them doing it to us, and then we don't have to do anything but complain. Well, what if it's all of us? Then we have to take responsibility. Then we have to really look deeper and harder at what is creating this unworkable world, this difficult world, and what's my part in that? And not what can I do to fight with those suppressors, but what can I do to change the fundamentals? Look, everyone has 401ks. Everybody needs the stock market to succeed. There are some people who are off the grid, and, I'm not talking about that small minority who are out of the system. Most of us are in the system, and it's a system we are supporting, really. And it's that whole system underlying worldview that needs to shift. And that's why the crop circles are so attractive to me, because they offer a possibility. They offer a hope that indeed everybody in the world all at once can go, wow, let's think differently. So when you think about how we would think differently, I want to say a few words about that also. And so if you think about the fact that fantasize contact is in headlines, everybody is now, it's been proved. Crop circles have been examined. It has been announced by the powers that be, we are not making all the, we know there are hoaxes, we're not talking about that, we're talking about the real phenomenon, and there is a real phenomenon that has not been solved. So if indeed we have another intelligence engaging with us, we all know it now, it changes our sense of being. We are one humanity in relation to the other, whatever it is. We don't know what it is. Is it extraterrestrials? Is it another dimension? I don't know. We've never identified anything other than ourselves definitively that can act intelligently like humans. But whatever it is, it's another intelligence. And all of us are in one conversation all over the world. What is it? What do we do about it? And it's not something that is today's news cycle and goes away tomorrow. It's forever. Something's changed. And this arrogant species that we fundamentally are, where we kill each other and make wars and strive for making huge amounts of money, well, all of a sudden, we are humbled. Wait a minute. There's other intelligence, and it's greater intelligence than ours. They're visiting us. We're not visiting them. It would just change something so essential and so fundamental in our entire perspective. Just like the last time we had such a major shift was Galileo, Copernicus and Galileo, when Earth was removed from the center of the universe. And if you follow the historical progression of how things changed, we got to things like democracy. It was kings and serfs before that. But there was something equalizing about it. Again, we were no longer the center of the universe as a planet. Now we would no longer be the unique intelligence in the universe as a species. So something would pervade our fundamental being that would change our mindset. And, there's this opportunity for the change of worldview that we just desperately need more than anything else. So, you know what? I just as soon not take questions now. You can do questions with me anytime after or at the end maybe if we have time. But I won't get through what I want to say if I take questions now. So just hold your question until later. So in the meantime, while this worldview is changing, I want to speak to the value of mystery. There's this kind of cynicism and skepticism, and if anything possible comes up, the skeptics are on it, Rupert Sheldrake and Graham Hancock, and that's another story of my TED involvement for any of you who know what's going on there. But I want to say something about this value to holding ourselves in mystery, to holding ourselves open to the unknown. And I want to read something that Brian Swimme wrote. Brian Swimme is my absolute favorite cosmologist. And so I want to read you something that he said. He was writing about my movie, but he was really writing about mystery. And we'll come to, he says a few things about the movie here, but I'm really reading it because I want you to hear what, he's the most beautiful writer. There's cosmology with data. This happened and that happened and the other happened, but there's also a kind of poetry and beauty to the way he frames his perspective. He's a mystic physicist. So I'm reading now. Albert Einstein once remarked that for the human, there was no more powerful feeling than that of the mysterious. In fact, he was convinced this feeling for the mysterious was the cradle for all works of science, art, and religion. In light of Einstein's conviction, one might ask, what is the opposite of the feeling for the mysterious? The opposite would be the sense that one understands it all. The opposite would be the feeling that one is in possession of a system that explains all the phenomena in the universe. For such a person, the universe loses its appeal, for it becomes something we don't really need to pay attention to. The universe becomes the exemplification of a theory that one has already understood. No real surprises are possible, only the working out of a logical system through time. When a feeling of the mysterious is lost, one becomes vulnerable to the various fundamentalisms plaguing our planet, each one with its passionate certainty that it has all the answers, while every other system is just superstition. In moments of stress and breakdown, like now, there's a powerful drive to acquire answers and explanations. Certainly in our own time, when we are dismantling ecosystems around the planet and deconstructing the stable climate upon which our civilization is based, we feel a deep need to know what is real and what is good and how to proceed. This need can become so great we are liable to latch on to one of those simplistic pseudo-explanations just to quell the feelings of fear and doom surfacing in us. Then he's talking about my movie, so we'll give it his plug. One on Earth does not provide any such simplistic explanations. This restraint is one of its greatest achievements. by insisting that the crop circles are beyond any easy explanation. What on earth enables us to make peace with living in the ambiguity of not knowing? This ability to live with ambiguity is related to a sense for the mysterious. And together, these two may be the most important factors for deep creativity to take place. At the very least, we need to realize that an embrace of ambiguity is a form of humility when confronted by the magnificent complexity of nature. So, you know, I'm going to come back and say some more about Brian Swimme. He's somebody you all should know about if you don't. So the progression that we've been in here, in the unfolding of the universe, and that Brian Swimme is in this school of this progression. We start with rocks, inert, no feeling. We move to plants that have an exchange with life. We move to animals that have mind, that can think. We move to humans that have self-reflection. Brian Swimme calls the move, he talks about the universe as a living entity, you might say. It started with the Big Bang, and it's still banging. We are the stardust. It's us. It's still moving, and it's evolving. It keeps evolving. When the universe gave rise to human, he has a chapter called Evil from Cosmic Risk. The universe took a chance. For the first time, it created something that could reflect upon itself. Oh, yeah, you want to do something good, you want something to appreciate it. So human could appreciate the creation, but it also could destroy the creation. Animals couldn't do that. They were operating on instinct. But humans have the power to destroy the creation. Okay, so where were we going from here? So we got this human in the progression of things. It's progressing, it's evolving. Where to from here? Well, what are we doing? We're looking for our source. We're looking for that sense of completion. We're looking for that sense of oneness where we feel ourselves aligned with the source. And we're looking for what's beyond us, beyond human. We're looking for other intelligence. What we're doing here this weekend, we're looking to take the human capacity and expand that and take the next step of evolution. This, by the way, I just want to hold this up. This is Brian Swimme's fabulous book. It's called The Universe is a Green Dragon, A Cosmic Creation Story. I just want to highly recommend it. It's the best book I've ever read. I've bought over 1,000 copies. Everybody I know has read this book. If you're a friend of mine, you want to become a friend of mine, you get this book. So I want to read one more thing, which is, strangely enough, Time magazine, of all places, in 2008, had this incredible issue. It was, the cover story was 10 ideas that are changing the world. And this is the writing inside that story. This was the editorial in the magazine. Ideas change the world. The power of a new idea is the engine that transforms the way we live and think. It was almost 50 years ago that Thomas Kuhn coined the term paradigm shift, the moment when our worldview fundamentally changes because of a new idea. As when people understood that the sun does not revolve around the earth, or that climate change is altering the way we would all have to live. And then in the story itself, when they're going to tell you about the 10 ideas that could change the world, I was just astonished that Time magazine was being so philosophical about things that the media doesn't really talk about that way. They talk about all of the problems that we have, how we're going to solve this, how we're going to solve that. It's all fingers in the dike until we deal with the worldview that supports all of this. We have to change the fundamental idea of what we're doing here to change really, to really grapple with all these dysfunctional systems.
So in the material to introduce the 10 ideas, they say this: the defining challenge of the 21st century will be to face the reality that humanity shares a common fate on a crowded planet. I'm excerpting things here. In some locations, societies have outstripped the carrying capacity of the land, resulting in chronic hunger, environmental degradation, a large-scale exodus of desperate populations. We are, in short, in one another's faces as never before, crowded into an interconnected society of global trade, migration, ideas, and yes, risks of pandemic diseases, terrorism, refugee movements, and conflict. We also face a monumental choice. Continue on our current course, and the world is likely to experience growing conflicts between haves and have-nots. Intensifying environmental catastrophes and downturns in living standards caused by interlocking crises of energy, water, food, and violent conflict. Yet for a small annual investment of world income, undertaken cooperatively across the world, our generation can harness new technologies for clean energy, reliable food supplies, disease control, and the end of extreme poverty. That's why the idea that has the greatest potential to change the world is simply this: by overturning cynicism, ending our misguided view of the world as an enduring struggle of us versus them, and instead seeking global solutions, we actually have the power to save the world for all, today and in the future. Well, Time magazine, I'm just still knocked out by that, because the media does not really talk that way by and large. And right on, how are we going to change this worldview? Well, you know, for me, it really is all I care about. And having been so immersed in this crop circles as a potential, radical game changer, I'm going back now to my roots in a more comprehensive interest in all the other things that could affect us as well. And so you should all get on my mailing list. You can sign up outside where the DVDs are. I'm about to start a new platform. Crop Circles will be there, but there will be other things as well. It will be very interactive. It's going to be called Doorway Cafe. So the idea being, that we're opening this doorway to the next reality. And just, to say a few words also, I thought, in fact, that my next enterprise that built on the crop circles and that brought me to this new platform, I thought it was going to be producing for TED. And I know they made some mention in the program that I was the producer for TEDx West Hollywood. I presume most of you know about TED, although I discovered that a lot of people don't. But this high-minded intellectual organization, it's all over the world. In the last 3 years, this single $8,000 weekend that they produce, that they sell out on and you have to apply to come to, of short speeches, and everybody famous in the world has made short speeches there. They created a new enterprise called TEDx, where they get granted licenses to people to produce mini TEDs. And I got the license to produce TEDx West Hollywood. And I thought that that was going to be a very powerful platform, because they have such a really significant brand. And when a TED Talk, raise your hand if you don't know TED. Few hands going up, but most of you know. When they like a TED Talk, when the TED Enterprise likes a TED Talk, millions of people see it. It spreads all over the world. And I created a fabulous program. It was called Brother, Can You Spare a Paradigm? I don't know if you're old enough to remember the Depression, but Brother, Can You Spare a Dime was a very famous song. So Brother, Can You Spare a Paradigm was the name, or Making the Quantum Leap was my subtitle. And it was full of different ways of getting beyond this worldview, of seeing outside it, of changing the world, actually. And I am no longer a TED producer because they canceled my license. A little resistance from the cynics of the world, the professional cynics, who have power with TED, it turns out. So there we have this maybe most high-minded organization in the world being held back, censored by the forces of repression and fundamentalism. So we're still, you know, in quite a essential battle to deliver all of it, you know, all these things we're doing here this weekend to open people's eyes, you know, to bigger realities. But I'm really, as I said, I'm quite intent on that. And I ended up without their license. Without their license, I lost my sponsors. They were sponsoring TED. I lost my venue, which was being donated to me, an award-winning building in West Hollywood. They couldn't do it when it wasn't TED. They didn't have, you know, the permission of the authorities, and they did it 2 weeks before my program. But I was so delighted with my program that I just did it myself. I paid for it myself. I did it myself. I have lawyers now. We have a situation with TED. This was not legal, what they did to me. But conceivably, it will all be, at some level, maybe even better, because for whatever my wonderful program would have been seen by a lot of people through TED, if we get into the media and the press with TED having, the situation with TED was very hot online. You're going to hear Graham Hancock. He was censored by TED also, and that created an uproar. When Graham Hancock and Rupert Sheldrake were censored by TED, it was the most contributed to blog commentary kind of thing ever online, and I was the number 3. TEDx West Hollywood was the number 3 victim of TED's repressive policies. So it could get kind of juicy out there. It could, because the dialogue was just online, essentially. The English papers picked it up, and the LA Times actually picked it up also, because I'm in LA and the other 2 are in England. But it didn't become a cause célèbre. Time magazine did not pick it up. But hopefully, as this goes on, this will become an opportunity to create this exploration of this repressive oppression that we're all under when we try to deal with these kind of subjects. Mine wasn't even as dicey, by and large, as our subjects are, but if that altercation really gets out there into the media, it will help all of us. It will be a platform in which we all can have a voice, and our voice, you know, won't be stomped on and squelched, because, interestingly enough, in the dialogue online that evolved from this, it was virtually all anti-TED, and it was participated in by Nobel Prize winners. The intelligentsia came out. The intelligentsia doesn't have a way to focus. That's what I'm going to try to do with Doorway Cafe. I'm going to try to create a focal point for the intelligentsia to deal with all of these kind of issues. But TED may be giving us a doorway, and I'm keeping my fingers crossed that, you know, in fact, that is what's going to happen. Somebody here has, I'm having trouble getting a lawyer. I actually had one who didn't understand my case. So he's an ACLU lawyer, and I thought, well, this is great. He's a fighter for justice. No, he wants to get Bush, but he did not understand UFOs and crop circles and cynics. And so somebody here has recommended a lawyer, but I have to find somebody who really, I have to check to see if this person knows TED. I have to get somebody who really knows what's going on and be passionate about trying to do something, because I have a fabulous case, and it will get attention. It will get this word out to the public. I was quite wronged by them. I did have a license, and it cost me a lot of money. So if anybody has that kind of lawyer, see me. So what else I want to tell you? I want to mention a couple of things. Beverly in the back, there's nothing to do with me. She's selling something called Rescue Tape. It's fabulous. I got it at a previous conference I was at, and I saw her here, and I thought, oh, I ran out, I want more. It's a fabulous product, so I want to send you to Beverly. And I want to mention this thing that's on the stage over here. This is the creation of Steve Percapo, who's from Illinois, who's here. It's a 3D model of the famous Barbary Castle crop circle with a something hedron hanging in the middle, and it's all comprised of sacred geometry and crop circle stuff. And Steve has the knowledge, opinion, what have you, that by making three-dimensional models, you're getting an alchemical result. And come up here afterwards, and he'll be up here, and he can explain it to you. And, you know, if that was really fabricated by not, you know, some real, some kind of manufacturer who could make it big and what have you, we really have quite a nice tool there, a product of beauty and also power. And I'll tell you just one more thing to impress you about Steve. I've known him for years. For some years, he was growing successive crops from crop circle seed, from the seeds inside crop circles. And each year, the yield in the crop would be bigger and better until the field burned down. So much for that. But he just told me something else, that he was given 2 ears of corn from a crop circle. We don't get many in corn, but there are some. And one ear was from inside, and the other ear was from outside. And, okay. The one from inside the crop circle did not germinate. It was Terminator gene, crop circle, Monsanto or what have you, Terminator gene. Oh, excuse me, the one from outside the crop circle did not germinate. That field didn't germinate. The corn from inside the crop circle germinated and grew. So another thing to attest to, you know, anybody can flatten crop. Hoaxers can flatten crop. They can't make biological changes to the plants or chemical changes to the soil, which is what we discovered when they were doing studies, when Lawrence Rockefeller, who was very rich, obviously, was funding crop circle studies, very carefully done with scientific protocol. We were discovering that sort of thing. The material was taken into the lab, and there were biological changes to the plants inside the crop circles and not in the controls, and the soil had chemical changes. So we haven't had those studies for some time. We don't really need them, in a sense, because the only point was to establish the fact that we had a real phenomenon here, and it wasn't all just flattened crop that anybody can do. The hoaxers have gotten very good at geometry. It used to be we could look at crop circles, and there was such bad geometry on some of them. Oh, that's a hoaxed one, terrible geometry. They've gotten good geometers who can't do that anymore. They've learned how to flatten the crop very well. But the fact that, you know, there's this other evidence of things they can't do is what attests to there being a real mystery still involved in all of this. So I like that corn story a lot. So I think I have like 5 minutes or so if I get an hour. We did start late. You want to ask me the question that came from over here? Do I still have my questioner? No? Does anybody have a 5-minute question or a good question that would take just a minute to answer? I've told you everything you need to know. Okay, question. Are there in the U.S.? Yes, we've had a lot of crop circles. We've had hundreds of them over the years. They're mostly near the Canadian border. Ohio is the biggest state. But they're never concentrated in an area where you can, you know, go and study them. You don't know where they're going to show up. And there's nowhere near as many in England, which is where the concentration is, and you can go and study them. But we have a very active crop circle research community in the States here. They have a little meeting in the spring every year. And they'll get on airplanes to go and examine those few that we get each year. I haven't heard of any this year. It's been a weird year for crop circles. England, it's been the strangest year since the 70s when the current phenomenon really picked up steam. They've had very few. They were messy and scrawny. And the last week or so, they've had a couple of decent ones. But I don't know what's going on. Maybe there's so much contention with the hoaxers, and they're really gotten nasty. You can't say anything online that's good about crop circles without, they seem to be patrolling. So when you say something good about crop circles, you'll find a comment under it, oh, you know they're all fake. You're just in it for the money. And you think, oh my God, everybody's scratching to make a living who's trying to make a living from them. But the hoaxers have gotten so nasty, and I wonder if the phenomenon has said, wait a minute, why are we landing in this place where there's so much fighting going on? We'll go elsewhere. And in fact, there have been more in other countries this year than ever before, countries that never had them before. But, no concentration, just spotty in all these places. But England's had its worst year this year. So I'm in a wait-and-see mode, like what's going on, I don't know. But I just know there's a real phenomenon. And that's really what's really important, if we could get that information communicated. So I think maybe I will end with that. So thank you all so much, really.